start. So today, I'm going to try to continue on the theme of analyzing, looking more closely at meditation and how that's a part of what we need to do in any practice we're endeavoring to undertake that will help us to really learn the concepts, the teachings, the various kinds of readings that Geshe Darge and the other teachers who've been teaching this Sunday morning class have been sharing with you. As I covered in the last time I appeared in November, I talked about the importance of meditation as one of the three prongs of really learning and then being able to adopt internally what's being taught. And it starts with learning. You know, you go to a teaching, you do readings on your own, you contemplate them, you really try to learn them as best you can. And then where the real rubber meets the road, so to speak, is taking that into meditation. We call that the object of meditation. And, some of you or all of you might do meditation, but it never hurts to really put what meditation is under the microscope and keep that in mind when we're doing our meditation practices. So, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go into that. But I wanted to start by setting a tone for what I'm going to cover today, which is this continuation of talking about meditation and really how to work with it, how to put your mind on an object of meditation. And I'm going to do that by trying to frame what our daily challenges are as every moment goes by. And I thought it would be auspicious to do that today by giving you a short reading from Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe was a wonderful teacher. He was a co-founder of the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition, along with Lama Zopa. And he was a wonderful yogi. He passed many years ago, but he was like a bundle of joy. So you'll hopefully get that in the way that I bring out this reading from one of his books. And the book is a short little book on the importance of meditation, and it's called When the Chocolate Runs Out. So he says, on some level, we may believe as long as I have chocolate, I'll be happy. So this is assuming that you love chocolate. Um, so just stay with that. Even if you don't love chocolate, make believe you do. This is the power of attachment at work, he says. And based on this attachment, we create a chocolate-based philosophy and order our life prioritizing chocolate. But sometimes we can't get our hands on that chocolate. And when the chocolate disappears, we get nervous. We get upset. Oh no, how am I going to be happy? But of course, it's not the absence of the chocolate that's making us unhappy. It's our fixed ideas and our misunderstandings of the nature of chocolate. Chocolate, like all our pleasures and all our problems, is impermanent. Chocolate comes, chocolate goes, chocolate disappears. And that's natural. When you understand this, your relationship to chocolate can change. And when you deeply understand this, you will truly have no fear of anything at all. So ultimately, you can't rely on chocolate. Chocolate isn't always with you when you want it. And it's not there. And when you don't feel like it, it's right there in front of you. All such transient pleasures, not just chocolate, are like this. And if you search for happiness, causes you to grasp emotionally at the sense world, you will find so much suffering because you have no control of the sense world, no control of impermanence. The Lama Yeshe says, but take heart. There's another kind of happiness available to you. A deep, abiding joy of silent experience, a joy that comes from your own mind. That kind of happiness is always with you, always available. Whenever you need it, it's always there. And you can discover this happiness by studying the mind, observing and investigating your mind is really very simple, so simple. With practice, wherever you go, at any time you can experience this happiness. So he says, of course, we know that it's impossible to find lasting happiness and satisfaction through chocolate. We know where to find chocolate, but what about deep and lasting peace? And so, what Buddhism offers is the perspective and the tools, the wisdom and the method to help you understand the root of suffering and to find a truly indestructible happiness, a happiness available in all time, all places, all circumstances, even when, as Lama Yeshe's title of his little book says, even when the chocolate runs out. So, what we're going to do here today is frame out like what is it that we're really trying to tackle? And at its root, I'm going to change the screen here from this is what I'm going to talk about in a moment. So, what we're really attempting to look at here are the cause of suffering at its root. And this is really the most important thing to keep in mind as we talk more forensically and more analytically about what meditation is. It's like, what are we using it for? Is what we're going to talk about right now. So, when we experience pleasant feelings, emotional attachment ensues. That's the attachment portion of this little circle you see here on the screen. And when that pleasant feeling subsides, craving arises. So craving arises out of attachment to these pleasant feelings and the desire to experience it again. I want that, I want that, I want that. And when we experience unpleasant feelings, aversion arises. And that's this portion of our little circle. We automatically dislike and want to get rid of the unpleasant feeling. Again, disturbing our mental peace. And when we feel neutral or bored, ignorance, that's the third little piece of our circle here, that arises. We ignore what's going on and don't want to see reality. And today we're going to be talking about looking at what's going on in our mind, the tools that we need to use to see what's going on in our mind. And this little diagram that's up here is the nature of the mind constantly. This is the nature of our mind when we're not observing it, when we're not skillfully seeing what is happening. And it's called detachment, aversion, and ignorance. Equals moment by moment. I don't care who you are, whatever it looks like for you in terms of how it's manifesting, it equals dissatisfaction. It manifests dissatisfaction in one form or another. So it's this cure when we look at meditation as the tool that we use in connection with teachings that we might learn about to help us with our daily suffering, that we're looking to really become masters of. We're trying to cure that dissatisfaction. So I think we all know that when we look at even cures that we utilize in ordinary life, like medicines for curing physical ills, and even medicines that we use to cure temporarily mental and emotional ailments, they'll never be able to cure this fundamental dissatisfaction. that comes from these three. They're called in Buddhism the three poisons, as it says on the image on the screen. So what we're trying to do here is explore that aspect of who we are. We have our physical self. We even have our mental self that we try to utilize ordinary means to alleviate suffering, like medicines. And they ultimately don't cure at the root level. That's what we're talking about, the root level of dissatisfaction. The cause of that is this undisciplined mind where this is going on all the time. This being the three poisons interacting every single moment of what is manifesting in your mind. And this is what we need to really see very clearly. Wherever you go, this dissatisfied mind is there. Even when you're happy, the happiness maybe pervasively comes to the fore for some period of time, but then it abates and maybe even disappears. And then these dissatisfactions are rise up again and take center stage, come to the fore in our mind. So we really, in meditation, we really learn to recognize um, the mind as the place where this kind of dissatisfaction is constantly occurring and how it can be dealt with. And in Buddhism, we have something called the Four Noble Truths. Most of you might be familiar with these, but they're the truth of suffering, the truth of the origin of suffering. And it's the truth of the origin of suffering that we want to make a bold statement. The bold statement is that we create all human problems ourselves, each one of us individually, not the guy next door, not the boss, not the leader of a country, a leader of another country, somebody who starts a war, somebody who kills people on a college campus. We create all human problems ourselves. And that's what we work with when we work with our mind. Um, we shouldn't blame anything on society. We shouldn't blame anything on our mother, our father, our partner, as I said, our boss, our friends. Yeah, they're there dependently arising, but they're dependently arising with those attachment and aversions that are naturally manifesting in our mind, and we mislabel them as coming from them, not from our own mind. That's the ignorant part of this constant process that's going on. So we're not really here to talk about this in any detail, but this is one of the most important aspects of what Buddhism has to offer. So I have to put a focus on it, and you have to have the courage to sort of wrestle with that statement and see if you agree with it. And the flip side of that is that if we're the creator of our own problems, and all of them, bar none, then we are also the creator of our own liberation from those problems. And that's what the Buddha taught, and that's what his teachings are about, helping us to identify what causes the sufferings and then how to first reduce them and then eventually totally alleviate them. And this is really an amazing thing that we have that available to us. And again, as I highlighted in the last session I hosted for in this series, I talked about the importance of these three aspects of utilizing the Buddha's teachings, studying, listening to, reading his teachings, contemplating them, and then meditating on them. And without the last one, they won't stick. And I'm going to get into like really what that means, what that really means, because that's where change actually happens in your mind. So, meditation practices are available to us. They're the key centerpiece of the teachings in terms of what we do with those teachings. Um, and so this is what we're focused on when we go into the kind of discussion that I'm going to focus on today. So we could spend a lot more time talking about the Four Noble Truths, the three poisons, etc., but we won't. So what I'm going to talk about next are the two parts of meditation. And again, some of you might be familiar with this already, but it never hurts to really analyze it because without really having a handle on the two stages of meditation and how we skillfully utilize them together in a productive meditation session that brings about the results we're looking for, then it's not going to work. As simple as that. So in this diagram here, we can see that there are what are called the stages of shamatha. And shamatha is also known as single pointed concentration. Um, and it's really foundational to all meditation practice. So I'll go to my little chart here. It's also called stabilizing meditation, shamatha, single pointed concentration. So the first thing to know about this kind of meditation is that it's a prerequisite for any lasting insight. We'll talk about what insight is momentarily, um, but we won't get into that yet. But insight is one of the main goals of meditation when we get to the end of the day of like what we're trying to accomplish in meditation. So when we say that it's a prerequisite, shamatha or single pointed concentration is a prerequisite for any lasting insight, then we can't be dismissive of it. We can't not pay attention to it. Um, and then what we're doing during stabilization meditation or shamatha is that we're concentrating on one object. This is what's called the object of meditation. Um, in shamatha practice, as I showed in this diagram, we focus on it. First, start by focusing on an external object. Um, And then we focus on that object in a way that we can actually bring it into and internalize it in our mind. Notice here in this little diagram that the little diagram's located at the heart center. In Buddhism, the mind is considered to be located at the heart center, not up here in the brain. The brain is a functional tool of thinking, processing, but it isn't the mind. It isn't the consciousness of yourself. And then the third stage here is that we focus on the mind, the mind being in union with that object. And that's what single pointed concentration really is. But to go back to this, when we talk about an object in meditation, typically it can be the breath. Most of us who do meditation know that. That's like the most common, but it's very powerful. It can be the nature of one's own mind. You'll see a little bit later in today's session, I talk about the different types of meditation and how meditation practices, in order to be really effective, right near the beginning, is you have to understand the nature of your own mind. And so there are meditations, prescriptive meditations that help you understand the nature of your own mind. It could be a concept. So here we're talking about something you maybe have learned conceptually with your intellectual thought processing mind, your critical thinking mind. You attend Geshe Darge's session and he has a specific reading, let's say from a Buddhist text, and you go through it and you analyze it. So then that is an object of meditation. And I talked a little bit about this in the one session I hosted last month when one of our participants in that session asked, like, well, how do you really work with one of these kinds of concepts that we might learn about? How do we internalize it? How do we make it part of our mind stream? So then when we say a concept, that's a lot. It could be the entire scope of the Buddha's teaching. It could be some other virtuous teaching that comes from Christianity or some other spiritual path, or even some insightful philosopher that we might find um, insight from. It could also come from a visual image. Some of us are used to doing meditation where we take an image. Go back to my diagram here. It's hard to see, but there's a little image here of the Buddha. So that's an example of using an external visual image, starting with the visual image externally and then internalizing it and then making it one with your mind in this three-step process of shamatha. So then this is very important that you understand when anybody says the word object of meditation, it's going to fall into one of these categories. And later, I'm going to give you a list of some of those meditations. And that becomes our menu, like when we're at a restaurant, of like what we feel like we might need in that moment. Once we have all those meditations available to us and we learn them, we can then utilize them by looking at where we are at any given moment in terms of what we might be challenged with, what we might be struggling with emotionally, um, stress-wise, anxiety-wise, depression-wise, etc. So I'm going to be going through the menu, like the chef who's prepared the menu, and talking to you about each one of the dishes, if you will. Um, and then, hopefully you can identify when I get to that something that you relate to. But in total, it's something that is available to you eventually once you allow yourself to take the time to learn all these different meditative techniques. So the another characteristic of stabilizing meditation is that once you are concentrating on an object, you see I put here in all caps, you do so without interruption. This is the opposite. You might not know this or be aware of it, I should say, but this is the opposite of your usual, normal, moment by moment state of mind. If you really stop and look at your mind in meditation, it's very hard to stay with one object. Your mind's constantly going off of the object. And that's because you have occurring in your mind, not controlled by you. You might think you control it, but moment by moment, there are an incredible amount of thoughts arising. According to Buddhist cosmology, Treasury House of Knowledge, Abhidhamma Kosha, which talks all about the science and structure of the universe, all the way down to subatomic particles. And it's an ancient text. It's very fascinating. Um, One of the aspects of what happens in the mind of a human being is that on average, there's 65 thoughts manifesting every split second. So it's like a menagerie occurring. So if one can't control one's mind on a single object, and you identify that once you get into meditation, don't be discouraged. It's because you have a lot going on that is constantly arising moment by moment in your mind stream. So, but we are trying to meet the challenge in shamatha practice to take one object and focus on it for some period of time without interruption. So, the next thing to say about shamatha meditation or stabilizing meditation is this: without concentration, single point of concentration, without shamatha, successful meditation is impossible. Why do we say that? It's essential because of what I was just babbling on about. If we accept for the moment that our ordinary state of mind is this constant ripening, of or occurrences of thoughts happening. Maybe even take for a moment that the Abhidharma Kosha is correct in saying that there's that many thoughts occurring every single moment. Then, if you're really going to try to focus on any one of these objects, the breath, nature of one's own mind, a concept of any kind, a visual image without interruption, which is the goal of the meditation, well, then it's impossible to do if you don't get it on your mind under control. So this is one of the fundamental things. It's like going to the gym and you have a trainer, and the trainer knows exactly what they need to prescribe to give you what you need to get into the shape, work certain muscles, maybe certain ailments that you have, that by doing this, the prescribed exercise is very specific, will help you. And you have to be able to successfully do that. So here, the meditative prescription is that you must have concentration. You must have single point of concentration to have meditation be successful. And the next thing to say is it's not that easy to bring the mind under control. And it's for everything I've just been saying for the past few moments. But the good news is that with the right guidance by a guided meditation teacher or master, you can learn some very basic stabilizing meditations, shamatha meditations, and if you just do them every day, like working out, you go to the gym, you get the exercise program from the trainer, you have to go home and do them, not just when you're at the gym, not just like on Wednesday night if you go to a meditation session at DNKL or someplace else. You have to do it every day. But the good news is that you only have to do it for 10 or 15 minutes a day. And then once you do that, your mind will become supple. It will get in shape. In shape means here, it's not a throwaway line. It's not just an analogy. Means that you can learn to quell the the random occurring thoughts that are always going on in your mind while you take and focus your mind on one object. And that's actually getting to the point where you have a supple mind that can engage clearly without interruption on a single object. So it requires that you let go of all other thoughts. And that's part of what you learn how to do in the exercise of doing shamatha meditation. So the results of it, you'll know that you're doing it well when you feel a sense of your mind opening up, meaning that the constant noise, so to speak, of what's going on in your mind of arising thoughts, when that is quelled, reduced, it creates a natural feeling of your mind opening up. It leads to sort of this spaciousness. It's quieter, less noisy. And ideally, you reach a state where you can calm your mind fully to focus on an object. It's completely calm, completely calm. So, why is that so important? Having that open mind, spacious, calm ground in place, moment by moment during your meditation, it then allows you to see the workings of your mind, both during meditation and during the rest of the day. And what's conjoined with that is as you move into trying to meditate on an object of meditation, like one of these, breath, nature of your own mind, a concept, a visual image, to benefit you in some very specific way, that ground of calmness allows that meditation to actually work and to transform what's occurring in your mind stream moment by moment. So hopefully you could see by this sort of description and walking through what shamatha or stabilizing meditation is, how essential it is, what it really looks like, what does it really mean. There's lots of text you can read about this type of meditation, but it boils down to this kind of awareness of knowing what it is. So the next part of meditation, and these two always go together in doing proper meditation, stabilizing meditation and this analytical meditation, also sometimes called insight. It also goes by some other names. It's not to be confused with insight meditation, which is actually a type of meditation that's taught, and it has its foundations in Buddhist meditation practices. But insight here has to do with the goal of analytical meditation. Might seem like they're two different things, but it's not. So, the analytical meditation, once you have shamatha or stabilizing meditation at your command, um, it starts with understanding an object of meditation on a conceptual level. So when we go back up here to one of these, the breath, nature of one's own mind, a concept from one of the teachings, let's say, that you've been learning about in these Sunday sessions, a visual image, it starts with analyzing the image conceptually so that you understand it. What that does is it takes the object and your mind's engagement with it, which are like this. They're far apart from each other. I'm holding up on the screen my two hands. And the analysis helps to bring them much more closer together, where you feel like, I've got it. I get this. This is something I conceptually understand. And then you actually could even become somewhat fluid with it. So it always starts with that. Remember, we're doing this in the context of having done in the first part of a meditation, and we'll get into doing a couple of meditations, if not today, which we probably will have some time for, but certainly next session that I'm going to do next week, we'll be applying shamatha and single pointed concentration and analytical meditation. But as you can actually with that calm mind, that calm ground that's less noisy, first start by analyzing the object when you're in that state, the concept that you're analyzing, trying to learn that concept intellectually, conceptually. It becomes clearer and more easy to do. Even complex concepts, they become more and more close to your mind, having familiarity with it, comfort with it, residing with it. And then this, as it says here, that leads to crucially, um, uh, it's crucial, is what it's saying here in my sort of cheat sheet, and it's crucial to gaining real insight and realizations. So flashing light, when you learn these concepts about how to work with inner the inner science, so to speak, of how to deal with daily difficulties that we all have in our lives, the only way that that is going to change to something that meets those challenges and improves everything in terms from your outlook to your emotional states to how you're functioning in life, in your job, and all the ordinary ways that we're experiencing is to get to the point where you use meditation, where you gain insight and what we call in Buddhism realizations. It's the realizations that occur in meditation, which is the end result of meditation, that actually transform what's in your mind stream. Is powerful. They're realizations in your consciousness. And this leads to conviction. It's like conviction where you can like uproot. something that you're trying to first reduce and then get rid of totally and plant in its place something more positive. So here we're talking about, and we'll see this when I do the walkthrough of the menu. Here we're trying to get to a place where we can, just to move to a different screen, um, replace these 10 non-virtuous occurrences that might be manifesting in some form or another of body, speech, and mind, manifesting some form or another in our mind stream, to finish that sentence, and replacing them with the presence of these, the 10 virtuous qualities of body, speech, and mind. And Buddhist practices, Buddhist teachings are all about trying to identify your awareness of the three poisons functioning constantly. They're manifesting in the form of 10 non-virtuous activities of body, speech, and mind, and then skillfully, with wisdom, working with them to replace them, if you will, with the 10 virtuous qualities of body, speech, and mind happening in your mind stream constantly. So it goes back to the Four Noble Truths, seeing that the truth of the origin of suffering is the arising of causes and conditions in your mind that come from those three poisons and letting your mind partake in that grasping. We talked about, desiring something over and over again ignorantly, or having aversion to something over and over ignorantly, as I mentioned in my opening comments. And then skillfully learning techniques to transform those, replace them, which is what's called the truth of the path. It allows us to bring us to a state where we have the opposite of all those negative non-virtuous qualities happening in our mind stream. So I'm just reminding us of the context of what we're talking about here. So it's very dynamic. And so the punchline is when we combine, and this is essential to what is meditation. If you're not doing both parts of this in any meditation session, you're not doing meditation correctly, frankly. Doesn't mean there aren't some benefits to it, but it's a one-two punch. So when combined, meaning analytical meditation with stabilizing meditation, it brings about the direct and intuitive knowing of the object of meditation. Because what happens is that once you get close, when you really bring those two objects, your consciousness, your mind, and the object of meditation closer and closer through analytical meditation, which is being done very clearly based on having calmed your mind and made the ground nice and clear for it to occur, meaning this, bringing together, then it gets to the point where they get so close that you can't, they're inseparable. And then they do this. And then it's at that moment you drop the analytical meditation and your mind and the object reside together in stabilizing shamatha meditation. And you stay there as long as you can with the object. And that's what this kind of thing looks like here when we talk about bringing the object into your mind and experiencing that directly, not analytically, not using concepts. Directly, you're just residing with it. And it's when you can actually reside with something directly in meditation and hold it for as long as possible without forcing it, that you have realizations, that you have insight. through the object of meditation's inseparable engagement with your mind. So this is like I'm being the mechanic here, and I'm taking you looking at the engine under the hood, meaning your mind, and showing you how the engine actually works and what's necessary in order to make it function properly and bring about the desired result. So, in order for this to really work well, we first have to identify the wrong concepts. This gets back to some of the jumping around I was doing earlier about learning and understanding the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, and then the subsequent teachings that come from the Buddha and from all the great masters over the centuries that help us attain the end of suffering, which is the third noble truth. But it's all about doing the work, which is really what the truth of the path is. Path means that you're working at making the transformation away from suffering existence, inner suffering, not having to be the goal of ending physical suffering. Not that we want that, and even temporary emotional in the moment suffering is one that's happening already. You can't stop that. What we're trying to do is prevent what occurs in the future. The future can be the very next moment, by the way. But that's what the teachings of the Buddha are all driven towards, ending suffering. This fourth noble truth, sorry, third noble truth is the actual end of suffering. And that happens by taking the path. Cessation, the truth of cessation, happens by taking the path. And meditation is a key is actually the most important aspect of it. It's all important. You have to know like what you're focused on, and then you want to be able to bring that into meditation and cultivate it, bringing about realizations. So you use analytical thought to first identify wrong concepts. We talk a little bit about that with the three poisons, non-virtuous activities. This is not a teaching about that. It's just to give you something to hold on to when these concepts maybe seem like they're just concepts. And you use this analytical thought, like I talked about, where you're trying to bring your mind together with the object, and then you gradually are eliminating these wrong concepts. And then in their place, you cultivate thoughts, feelings, and ideas that bring about happiness. And that has to do with some of the meditations that you can utilize, which I'm going to go through when I give us the next part of the talk here, which is walking through the menu of um, the different types of meditations that are available to us to apply in this combined way of stabilizing meditation and analytical meditation. But before I get to that, I just want to ask does anybody have any questions about what I presented so far or comments? Okay. So I'm going to go on and go through the menu of the different types of meditations that we do have available to us. So this here is sort of the framework for the menu. I mean, mind and meditation. Why meditate? What is meditation? I've already covered. Between my last talk I did in November and this one. I even talked about the science of meditation, not the science of meditation, but rather the modern science's analysis of meditation and the results of meditation and its effect on even changing the brain in a positive way, and showing how the parts of the brains that are associated with kindness and love and compassion are more at play moment by moment than ones where there are negative emotional states occurring, like depression, etc. And so, even scientifically, it's been documented over the last 25 or so years in various studies how meditation can work that way. So, the next part of what appears in the menu would be how to establish a meditation practice. I'm not going to spend time on this. I'm just going to mention it a little bit. Just so advice for beginners really has to do with like people who don't meditate. So I'm assuming everybody meditates here. Um, but if you don't meditate, then keep in mind, haven't meditated yet, and you're about, to maybe dip your toe in the water. Remember what I just said um, about like developing single pointed concentration. Just do it a little bit each day. The meditation that helps you to develop that. And again, we'll talk about that in a moment, what that is. Um, and the key is to be kind and gentle to yourself. Don't try to go whole hog at trying to meditate like too much. Better to do small, short meditative sessions, maybe once in the morning. If you feel like it, you could do it twice, once in the evening, and make them short. Better to get off the cushion when you are still having success than if you are struggling. And the longer you go, if you're a beginner, chances are you're going to struggle. Like you might have, and I'm going to jump to common problems. The two most common problems in meditation is being overly excited during your meditation session, meaning your mind is so active it's jumping all over the place, or that you're feeling very dull, maybe even dozing off literally, or at the very least maybe losing your focus and you can't stay on the object. So short sessions help with both of those common problems. There's many other things I could bring up, but those are the things to try to avoid. If you feel like there's too much excitement going on in your mind or too much dullness going on, better to get off the cushion, come back to it later. If you're doing it in the morning and you're somebody who maybe is used to having a cup of coffee in the morning, maybe try doing it before you have your cup of coffee in the morning. But if you feel that you're too dull, you can have a little bit of coffee, but then you might go on the cushion and find that that overly excites you. You find the best place to be in terms of your course level body and mind being, at least being able to focus. So these other, establishing a meditation practice has to do with the meditation session. That's like where you set up your meditation space. It's best to have a meditation space, by the way, that's not like sitting at the kitchen table or some other place that you're doing ordinary things that have nothing to do with meditation. The best thing to do is to create some space like in your house that um, is just for that. Even if it's just like a little corner of your bedroom, or if you have a room where you can actually set up a meditation space, it makes it special. And then posture has to do with um, the typical meditation posture. Again, I'm not going to talk about this in detail here because that's not the purpose today. But there is the one where you sit in what's called the 7 point Varchana meditation position, where your back straight, your legs crossed, your eyes slightly down, um, not focused on anything out there that will be distracting, relaxing your neck and shoulders. And there's a number of other details that are associated with the 7 point posture. But you could also just sit in a chair. But if you do, make sure you're sitting up straight, not leaning back in the chair. Make sure you have both feet on the ground, like they're connected to the earth. You're like a mountain. You can feel stable. You're immovable. It's important to have that feeling of like not physically moving. So this is sort of very basic. And then meditations on the mind are the ones that are the sort of preliminary practices that we put on the menu. They're like the appetizers. You got to have an appetizer. So for helping you develop stabilizing meditation, breathing meditation techniques, and there's two or three of them that you can use are essential. And then you can use them to open up every single one of your meditation sessions, even ones where your main focus is going to be analytical meditations. And then that's followed by meditations on the clarity of the mind. What do we mean by that? Clarity of the mind is helping you go into a meditation session where you can actually experience your mind in a clear state, its natural state, not a state where it has all this noise going on. So the purpose of that is to, if you're going to work on the ground of your mind to make it calm so that you can practice the focus of your meditation with the object you're engaged with in a positive way, in a clear way. You want to be able to see that ground. Well, what is the mind? And how, what's its characteristic? What does it look like? And that's what's done in meditation on the clarity of the mind. Meditation on the continuity of the mind lets you understand a very essential quality of the mind, that the mind has always existed. It's never come into existence and it's never going to go out of existence. This is your natural, in Buddhism, we call it Buddha nature. But knowing that your mind comes from a previous moment and that comes from a previous moment, that's endless. If we think about it in time and space going moment by moment backwards and also forwards. So it's important because as you learn about the mind, you're going to experience the mind in a way where you go, ah, I see that. And that's important. It's very important. You'll find out as you get into meditation practices more and more. So these are like the meditations on the mind set the table. They're the appetizers on the menu. And then there's analytical meditations. So you see that the first one I say is a meditation on emptiness. Meditation on emptiness is one that is essential. It helps you to understand the true nature of all things. If you can start to glimpse the true nature of all things, yourself included, then it helps you to have confidence that you can change things because nothing has a fixed quality. As much as you think it might, nothing has that. And it's because nothing has a fixed quality that you can change it, including your mind, your own mind. So this is why it's important. And getting comfortable with that concept is something that you want to start to have a realization. Yeah, that's how everything really is. It's liberating. It's incredible. And then appreciating your human life helps you to not take for granted that you're sitting here today and that you have the opportunity to like end suffering. And you don't want to waste your precious human life because when it's gone, well, you can't do that. You can't do these practices that are available to you. So, um, and then the next two meditations probably should even be considered like I'll indent them, sort of indent it like these are specific meditations that are done to help you put rocket fuel on having an appreciation for your precious human life, having an awareness of death, having an awareness of impermanence. These are not morbid, these are, again, liberating, and they energize you mentally and emotionally to get up every day and make it a top priority to do this kind of practice. Um, Lama Yeshe um, talks about a little bit later in one of the other quotes I had pulled but didn't read earlier. Um, he talks about this in the context of, how do we really prioritize things in life? He says, if somebody beats you up physically, you'd get real, if somebody were to beat you up physically, you'd get really upset and definitely want to do something about it right away. I don't think anybody would argue with that, right? And then he says, but consider this, the worrying mind of my problems, and my problems. They beat the crap out of you all day, every day, week after week, month after month, year after year, lifetime after lifetime. And you just sit there idly by, hoping that it will pass on its own. That's ignorance in Buddhism. Um, so he says, why not take action? So, he goes on to talk about turning to face your problems and working with them. Because if you're going to take care of your physical body, why wouldn't you take care of your mind, which is the cause of all your real suffering? So then this is all connected to like the energy that these kind of meditations give you, appreciating the opportunity you have. Even if you were born a human, but you weren't born where you are now, you live in a pretty nice place, relatively speaking, compared to the vast majority of humans, then you want to take advantage of having this precious human life. So then the rest of the menu on analytical meditations has to do with meditating on suffering. This is really drilling down on understanding this, the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, like really understanding them, how we live in an ongoing state of dissatisfaction. That word Lama Yeshe used earlier, and I amplified. That's the truth of suffering. It's always there. And it's caused by us, suffering arising from causes and conditions that we create, things we desire and attain and then lose them because of impermanence. And then we desire them and we just go after them more. It's called self-grasping. And then the opposite of that, having an aversion for things we don't like and wanting to avoid them at all costs. So then this is all part of what we're talking about on the menu here when we talk about meditation on suffering is understanding that clearly, having it become visceral. And then the next meditation, these are very interesting meditations that occur at this point. Equilibrium or equanimity. This is like it's taught in Buddhist um, thought that one can't properly settle one's mind and start to move in the right direction until we get rid of self-grasping and aversion. So in this kind of meditation, we set that table for looking at all sentient beings, especially all humans, as being equal. They're equal in wanting happiness and not having suffering. And we learn in this meditation to actually have the insight and realization not to feel attachment or aversion to any sentient being, anyone. That means anyone. So once we set the table with that kind of meditation, we can then do what are called all-encompassing meditations on love, kindness, and compassion. So when it says meditation here on love, it could say also kindness. Ooh, I said linkness. Can't spell. Kindness, and I could also say compassion. And then there's a whole set of, and again, once we've put our mind in that space of equanimity or equilibrium, there's a whole set of meditations that help us to deal with negative energies that are pervasively in all sentient beings' minds to one degree or another. And that is um, anxiety, um, depression, and the third one is anger. So these are pervasive. And if we wrestle with them and remove those kind of negative energies from our mind stream, they really clear the way towards that open spaciousness that can occur where we can deal with a lot of the other kinds of secondary and tertiary identified mental afflictions and sufferings, etc. And then there are the meditations that use, spelled this wrong, visualization meditations. And here we start with a very basic meditation on light. Light is a very auspicious, visual, meditative object to use in Buddhism. It represents purity, it represents clarity, it represents the absence of suffering, it represents the absence of negativities, and I can go on and on. It also, on the positive side, represents purity and it represents peacefulness and it represents happiness and joy, etc. So, both from a negative viewpoint and a positive viewpoint, light is a really precious object. Remember, everything's an object of meditation. And then that leads right into um, purification meditations that start to use specific objects. We go away from the pervasive use of light into specific objects. And then specifically, we start to do other meditations in Buddhism. We would maybe do a meditation on Tara. Tara is a female version of the manifested enlightenment of Buddha. We also do meditations on Buddha, but I lead guided meditations on a regular basis. And depending on who the audience is, I don't just use Buddha or Tara. I might use Jesus. I might use Muhammad. I might use someone else. So then this is all part of the universality of utilizing uh, a visual object of meditation in a way that pulls its nurturing and positive qualities forward into your mind stream, and then you can reside with it and have realizations occur in your mind stream from that. And then, of course, meditation on compassion is very important in Buddhist meditation. Inner heat meditation is a type of meditation that starts to get at working with a visual of working with your what's called your inner body. So these are all on the menu. These are all on the menu of my restaurant, if you will. It's not my restaurant, but Buddhist meditation practices. Um, and then there's devotional practices, the last set, and these can involve prayers, actual again, remembering these are objects of meditation. They can involve explanations of prayers. So then this might be taking a prayer and hearing a commentary about it. And then that becomes the commentary becomes the explanation. And again, if if you're delving into a topic in a way where you're listening to a commentary or explanation or teaching on something, it will not stick unless you bring it into meditation eventually. And never mind not sticking, you won't have your own realizations from it unless you practice in the way that we're talking about here today. Um, and then it also includes a meditation on what's called the gradual path to enlightenment. This is the path that at DNKL, for example, is utilized. It's called the Lam Rim. And it is a use of that kind of meditation where one learns the Lam Rim, which are the steps on the path to enlightenment. You learn them and then you meditate on them. And here there's a short meditation on that. You could do that in a very short, you know, um, encapsulated way. And then all these other practices are very specific practices to help, to really tap down your mind's sort of negative experience of the kind of things that are normally happening in your mind stream and replacing them. So there are different, but these are all under a different type of meditation, which is devotional. Here you're using the inspiration of devotion to a path or to maybe a deity or maybe to certain kind of prayer that is inspirational to you. Maybe some basic concepts. These are like the eight Mahayana precepts, um, are very, very well known. Inspirational Lojong, which is mind training practice. Um, so they have a different energy than, let's say, maybe the visualization meditations or maybe the analytical meditations. But you could see sort of an evolution too, that the analytical meditations move into deeper kind of meditations that one could have, on this menu of meditations. So that's kind of the chef's review of the menu. So I'll stop there for a moment and see if anybody has any comments or questions about what I've covered so far. Nobody has any comments or questions?
Yeah,
Do all
yeah.
of you do meditation, by the way, of some kind, or?
I have a question, John.
Great.
Okay, so this is not a question. I'm just asking you to clarify something you said because you divided meditation into, I think, three categories at the beginning of your talk, and then you went into some detail. Uh, and I'm kind of forgetting what those three categories you identified for us, these great categories. I remember, analytical meditation being one, and there was one that was kind of like, I guess, shamatha, calming or focusing the mind. Could you just review that again and tie it into what you just finished explaining of all these very great meditations we get to try? I'm just not sure exactly I'm remembering correctly, and I might not be the only one.
Sure. Sure. It's a great question. Let me bring that back up because I stopped sharing the screen. So actually, in going back to this part of what we talked about, I was jumping around on the visual, so that might have become confusing. But essentially, there's two tent poles or two bookends to a meditative experience that's done properly. One is developing, um, and then having at your command when you go into every meditation session, stabilizing meditation, otherwise known as shamatha or single pointed concentration. And that's being able to hold an object of meditation clearly without a lot of noise and interference. And then the other bookend or tent pole is analytical meditation. And in a typical meditation session, what you do is you start with stabilizing meditation. Typically, you're using the breath. And then one once has once one has one's mind calm and focus, you then move into an analytical phase of the meditation where you take an object like the nature of one's own mind, or maybe a concept you've been studying, or you just learned from Geshe Darge in one of his Sunday classes, and you analyze it with that clear mind having been established right before you started the analytical meditation. And you try to keep both very clearly in mind. If your mind starts to wander, you go back to the stabilizing meditation. Maybe it's your breath where you just bring your focus back to the breath. You see these thoughts jumping around, you see them, and it's empowering to see them. Normally, we don't even see them, and we just let them go. And then we come back to the breath to help you bring your single point of concentration back. Then you go back to the analytical meditation. And then once you get really comfortable with the object of meditation analytically, conceptually, and it gets very close to your mind and you feel really close and comfortable with it, the third part of meditation comes in, which is going back to single point of concentration, but this time it's with your mind fully and comfortably engaged, just residing with the object of meditation in the way that you now know it and learned it in the analytical phase. And then that is the third phase. So you're kind of, not kind of, you're going from starting with shamatha into analytical phase of your meditation and then back into a single pointed concentration phase of the meditation, but on a higher ground, so to speak, where you've now taken the object of meditation and brought it so not only into focus with single pointed concentration, but through analysis, feel like you really know it really well. And it's like, yeah, I know that and I feel close to it. And then you want to bring it into union inseparably with your mind. So then you move out of the analytical phase and just rest with the knowledge that you've gained through the analysis and try to hold that single pointedly as long as you can. And they say that done in this way, that last phase is where all three are necessary, is where the realizations, to use a word to label it, the insight that you as a practitioner will have. And it might look somewhat different, even the same object for you than for me or for somebody else, because we're all different and we all have ripening um, experiences and different kinds of thoughts. We are different people. We're not all like in unison. So the technique is common. Use this three-phase process in a meditation session, but the end results are going to be unique to you. And it's always helpful to have a teacher that you can then go back to and talk to about what you've realized or had insight to. But the most important thing is that you're doing it wisely. The meditation session, you're taking one of these items off the menu and you're working with it in order to improve your state of mind. Even if you're a beginner and just starting with breath meditation, know that you're not just trying to calm your mind down. You're trying to really get to this place where you can do this kind of skillful meditation session. Um, there's real purpose to it. A lot of people don't go past like just doing breath meditation. Um, so I don't know. Does that help, Richard, in terms of answering your question?
Oh yeah, and unfortunately, it's causing even more curiosity. I have even more questions, but I'll let someone else ask a question. But I just want to just sum up. You're saying the first of those three categories you described, the first one is absolutely necessary, and that's some sort of uh, calming down or focus or uh, I think the word you're using is um, uh, I don't know. I would call it shamatha, but you would call it, what would you call it for the purpose of this class? That category, the first.
I would call it, you could call it shamatha. It's sometimes called stabilizing meditation.
Stable. Yeah, yeah. You describe that as being some sort of middle between excitement and dullness, right?
Yes, I mean when we talk about the nine sort of steps to get to a point where you're doing meditation as perfectly as possible, along the way you're wrestling consciously with trying to avoid dullness, which I mentioned earlier,
Yeah,
or mental excitement. But it's not just that. It's also being able to stay with the object
yeah,
in a way where even if you're not dull or overly excited, as things might interrupt your focus, things really mean thoughts. You can stop and actually look at them and let them go. Just go,
right.
okay, I see you. I'm going back to my breath. And then, or I'm going back to my object of meditation where you are in that space called shamatha.
Got it. So that first phase that you, let's call it stabilization, because I think that's excellent. It's more than just too much coffee, not enough coffee. It's more than just I'm too excited or I'm too dull. It's actually being able to hold what you're calling an object.
That's right.
And then the
And we,
second phase, sorry, the second phase then is this sort of analytical phase. Then the third phase you're calling some sort of insight. And then you're giving us all sorts of things we can practice. And I guess we have to, each of the list of the things you've given us that we can practice, we have to go through all three of those stages with it. I mean, we really have to, like, return to the stable mind, then return to the analysis of what you're bringing up as a topic of meditation, and then go to this idea of, like, insight, which which I think is the key. I mean, that's the most difficult phase, probably getting so that you aren't analyzing it anymore, but that you're becoming, what did you say? You're making it part of you, or what did you say that was?
You become inseparable with it.
You become inseparable with it. Okay, this is quite good. Now,
Well, let me make a comment about
yeah,
the
yeah,
first
yeah,
part.
yeah.
It's something I neglected to say earlier. That as you're trying to develop that, you go back to my analogy of going to the gym. If you're somebody who's completely out of shape when you go to the gym, to start, and you don't have, any single point of concentration, your mind's just like shoop, 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 just going all over the place and always does, and you're not even aware of it. Like a good meditation teacher will tell you, don't worry. Remember, I said, like, try to do maybe 10 or 15 minutes of that kind of stabilizing meditation every day to build up. But I mean this literally. If you try to do stabilizing meditation and you try to just even hold your focus on your breath or on one of the other primary tools that are used in my menu here, like meditating on the clarity of the mind, and you can't hold it for more than a second, that's okay. I will tell you, and most meditation teachers will tell you, if they're really experienced, that either themselves or many of their students have been in the same place. And I'm going to say myself, when I first started meditating, I couldn't hold anything for a half a second. And they say just keep going back to the object, letting go of what you then identify as interfering with your focus, thoughts coming and going out of your mind, into your mind and out of your mind across your mental horizon, and just keep sticking with it. And I will tell you that what will happen is that your mind will start to be able to hold the object for 5 seconds and 10 seconds. And I mean this literally 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, then an hour, 2 hours, and then for as long as you want, without any discomfort physically or mentally. That's where it goes. That's when you really get buff in the gym and you're rocking it. It's possible. So Richard, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to clarify that's part of like the advice I have, especially for beginners, but even for people who've been trying to meditate for a long time, if their concentration isn't so good, go back and work on it. It's okay. Don't neglect it. It's important.
Yeah, all good. Really great advice. So I'm going to stop asking questions after this one because somebody else might want to turn. But when you get to I mean, this idea of stabilizing, analytical, and then insight. Um, like when we get to this, for example, you've got a list of analytical meditations, but say pick one, meditation on suffering, right? That
Hmm.
we do all three phases. We have to stabilize, then we analyze, and then eventually we have to do this thing you're calling insight, the third stage, with it to sort of become inseparable, is the word you use, from whatever we discovered during our analysis meditation, right? Analytical meditation. Would that be correct?
Yes, and really, the third phase, after you've finished analyzing conceptually the object, then
Yeah.
moving into the third phase, you could say it's returning from a technique point of view. You're returning to a state of shamatha, but
Yeah.
now it's with the object where you are bringing it into, a big hug, a real, like you're inseparable with it, and you just reside with that object without any analysis. So you're in a way you're returning to the tool itself called shamatha. The first phase when you're using shamatha, it's the setup, establish a calm ground to then start to move into your analytical meditation. It's not the same as the resulting third stage of the meditative process. It's that, because now you're engaging in a specific object that you analyzed and that you're just resting with or residing with. In Dzogchen, that's like the goal in Dzogchen is just to reside or what they say rest with um, the object of meditation. That's what we're doing here. So it clarifies a little bit more that it isn't that the third phase is called or identified as being insight or realization. That should be the result of the third phase. But really it's returning to shamatha, but now in tow you have the object of meditation where you're trying to move from this closeness of feeling really comfortable with it that you developed during your analytical phase of meditation, and now you're going to just rest with it. In other words, become inseparable with it. And from that, they say that these are when insights and the manifestation of realizations occur in one's mind stream.
Wow. Okay, great. So yeah, I just wanted to add, this is my question really. When you get to the visualization meditations, are they insight meditations or are they analytical meditations or are they something else? Is this a fourth category?
Yeah,
How would
yeah,
you
yeah.
describe those? Yeah. Okay.
Every one of these, that's a good question. Every one of these meditations have an analytical aspect, but what's prominent in the analytical meditations that are on the menu here are that you really have to conceptually, read about these topics, listen to others teach them in the context of how they can alleviate your suffering, which is the focus of these Sunday morning sessions, um, and then work with them as that from being the starting place. But when we go, for example, to the visualization meditations, the the analysis on that level that I just described associated with the ones that are appearing on the menu under analytical, they recede. They're still present. So you still have a phase in your meditation where you analyze them. So for example, when you do a meditation on the Buddha, it's about visualizing the Buddha, but then you do a scan walkthrough of the Buddha as he's appearing to you, of how he's appearing physically and what that physical manifestation of his hand in this position, his color of his body, what it means. But that's analysis. But it's not a conceptually or intellectually complex like some of these under the analytical meditation. So analysis is still present in the visualization meditations, but they recede relatively speaking. They don't, it's not like they're not, you don't have some element of that. And therefore, the three phase meditation process I just described still applicable.
Right. Beautiful. Thanks for breaking it down and simplifying it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I had,
So go ahead. Anybody else have any other questions?
I had a question, John. I was wondering, do you think you could like guide us in one of these like meditations real quick? Like especially like that first stage of meditations, like the clarity of the mind. I've never experienced that myself, and I'd be very interested to like see what that actually looks like.
Yeah. So I kind of planned this presentation that I'm doing for you guys to be like a two-parter, meaning, I'm scheduled to teach today, and all things being, equal next Sunday. So what I would like for us to do, I can't do it in a few minutes. That's impossible. Um, but you led me right to where I want to go next, but it will have to be like next Sunday. So what I want to do is at the beginning of next Sunday, if you can come next Sunday, I'm going to, and if you can't, like, Chappelle's making a recording too, so you can listen to it. But I'll do like a off the top refresher, meaning take 5 minutes of what I covered today, just to put it fresh back in our minds. And then I'm going to do two meditations back to back. One will be to demonstrate um, the this meditative process in action, and one will be on the clarity of the mind. Very fundamentally important. Anyway, we need to have that always. So I'll honor your request, and then I want to do a meditation on equanimity by using a famous verse. So you guys can read it if you're not familiar with it, but I'm sure everybody here is. But by using the four immeasurables. But it's going to be done in a way where it is creating the ground for equanimity in our mind stream. Taking that clarity of mind that we'll establish in the first meditation and then applying equanimity, which is one of the meditations under in our list of um, meditations that we have under analytical meditation. So it will be a perfect example of like what Richard was asking me to, to explain in a little bit more detail. So we'll take everything I talked about today and put it in context, and then you can utilize this with any topic that gets presented moving forward on these in these Sunday morning sessions, and anything else that you read and that you want to try to bring inside. And bring inside means put into your mind stream and see if you can have that be used as something to help you reduce mental afflictions, emotional distress, anything that these different meditations address. And one can do a whole series of meditation sessions on each one of the ones I have on my menu. Um, but for the purposes of being the substitute for today and next Sunday, I've set it all up here for you. You can read the menu. I've described for you what's on the menu, but you're gonna have to wait till next week to have the meal that you ordered. Um, so we know that you've ordered that. Is that okay with you? Are you going to be able to make it next week?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. So, and then anybody, and then, if anybody's interested in that, which is I sort of identified as an appetizer, and then we'll do one of the main courses, and that will be the equanimity meditation using the four measurables, which is just a simple four-line verse, but it embodies so much. That's why it's called Four Immeasurables. So I think that's it, unless anybody else has any other questions. We're at the end of the time for the session, but I'm happy to take one or two more questions if anybody has any. So we're all good for today, right?
Well, one more thing is, where do you want us to read this? You said we could look it up about the four immeasurables. Which text would you recommend we read to prepare for next week's four immeasurables?
Ah, yeah. So, um,
John, you can send it to me and I'll post it in next week's class as a
thank you.
link. Okay.
Gloria just answered the question. I'll send it
So,
to Gloria later, and then it will be up there on the 21st listing on the DNKL calendar of events. If you click on this event, then she'll have it posted there.
is that okay, Richard?
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot. Perfect.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
All right, we're done for today.
Oh, we got one more. What is,
Oh, okay. What is the mechanism by which the mind brings the thoughts into focus? The mechanism. Yeah, brings thoughts into focus. Well, it definitely um, fully 100% depends on stabilizing shamatha process. You have to first learn how to calm the mind, and then what happens when you calm the mind is you actually are able, you will, if you haven't experienced this, you will. Uh, you will actually see your thoughts occurring. They're happening all the time, but you just don't see them because you're not paying attention. You're not looking at them. And so once you can see them arising on the horizon of your mind in single pointed concentration. So what will happen is if I take you into like a breath meditation and I just try to keep you there, what will happen is you'll see a thought, maybe more than one. And then by being able to see it, you then have at your command the ability to do something with it. So it's as simple as that, but it's as hard as that because we never do it. So the mechanism is actually using shamatha where you then want to use your single point in concentration to then have your mind be calm enough so that you could see the thoughts arising. It's like one corner of your mind looking at something else that's occurring in the mind, which is the arising of thoughts. And you can do that in meditation. I do it all the time. It's just getting a handle on using shamatha in that way. And then what you do with the thoughts is skillful use of what you do with the thought. You need to learn like what are the options of like bringing into your mind that thought. You don't have to bring it into mind. They're already there. You just have to learn how to, because I'm reading your note when you say the mind brings the thoughts into focus. It's the mind being able to see them in the way that I just identify. And then there's various things you can do with your thoughts. You can engage with them with some skillful purpose, or you can let them go. Typically in meditation, we let go of our ordinary thoughts because it's not part of our object of meditation. But we might have some reason why we want to make a thought an object of our meditation that does arise, then that's fine. But really, what we're really after for the most part, as beginners, is to take an object of meditation that we decide we want to find and focus on in our mind before we sit down and start the meditation session. And then that's the quote thought that we stay focused on through the meditation and then have the further experiences that I described occur. So Karen, does that help or make sense?
Yes. It's, I was wondering, like, if it's the difference between the mind and the thoughts, and somehow the mind is the strongest piece, and so it can bring sort of the thoughts to where it wants to go. But you said it is the piece, one piece of the mind looking at another piece of the mind, which is very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. And when I say that, it's like what's occurring in the mind. Um, your mind is separate from your thoughts. You just think that they're your mind, which is why one part of your mind, as we're moving along moment by moment in this dualistic reality of time and space, that we can actually utilize that I just described. We can, one part of our mind can look at another part of our mind, but in reality, we're really just looking at our own mind, and the thoughts that are arising are not our mind. They're just what is occurring in our mind, but they're not our mind. So that might seem like a brain twister a bit, but I'm glad you brought that up because it's a little bit of something to focus on in the future in terms of if we ever have a chance to get together and maybe do a series of these meditations specifically, we can kind of drill down on that and then more experientially have an awareness of what I'm trying to describe sort of poorly in a conceptual way. Again, it gets down to like being able to experience actually some realization of that kind of thing. All right. I think we're way past our time, so we need to end.
Thank you very much, John.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And I hope to
Thanks,
see
John.
everybody next week.
Thank you.
Okay.
No
Bye bye.
snow.
Yeah, no snow. And I'll try to come up to DNKL if the weather is better next Sunday, too. I'd like to be there in person.
That's great. Thanks,
Okay.
John. Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you.